Good afternoon, everyone. It's Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. This is a school board workshop, and the time is 1:00 p.m. Sergeant at Arms, has the lobby been cleared? Yes. Thank you. There are 11 items on today's agenda. Safety update, construction change order, December 24, 25-26 Code of Conduct for Students, first briefing. 25-26 Conduct of Adult Students, first briefing. Human Resources Division Outcomes, Budget Overview, Proposed School Start Times for the 25-26 school year, Job Descriptions Policy Review, Public Comment, and Good of the Order. Per board protocol, each board member should strive for 4 minutes for initial comment and 2 minutes for follow-up, totaling 10 minutes during our discussion. Today, we are going to start off with, we're going to begin with our safety update presented to us by Dave Newland.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Dr. Denise Carlin, and our board attorney, Robert Dodig, is here today. As you know, this is a safety update. We're going to do monthly updates on certain topics when it comes to safety. So today what I'm here to talk about is OpenGate. As you all know, during the inception of OpenGate, when we first started OpenGate and put them into our schools, as you know, it took us about a year for the whole project to make sure every school site was covered, every entry point, and getting that process down with staff and students and even the public coming to our main entry point. The interesting part now is, as you know, or you may not know, but we get data from our local partners, law enforcement partners, every month on number of arrests that occur at our schools, notice to appear. And for those of you who don't know what notice to appear is, it's it's not a physical arrest, but it's a court date. You would appear on a later time for some type of criminal violation. And then we have civil citations. So those are given to us each month by all 4 of our local law enforcement partners. And so the interesting concept was, since we've had a good mid-year of use this year of OpenGate compared to last year, one of the questions was, is there a correlation to the incidents that occur at schools based on law enforcement activity? Again, mentioning arrests, notice to appears, and civil citations. Has those activities or incidents reduced since OpenGate's been in our schools? So is there a correlation? The answer was, looking into this, initially the answer was, I didn't know the answer to the question. Let's see what the data shows. I know what the feedback was from all of our schools, that they felt there was a difference, they could see a change. But again, looking at feeling versus data, what does that look like? So what you'll see, first of all, this is 2023 mid-year comparison, August to end of December, to our mid-year of 2004, August to end of December for this year. So last year, you'll see there's a total of 604 incidents that have occurred total in 2023. And again, that's a combination of all your agencies, law enforcement agencies. That includes just your arrests, notice to appears, and civil citations. In comparison to this year, mid-year, we're at 366. So it's a pretty significant decrease compared to last year. And actually, as you can see here, I break down the data. It kind of shows that each agency. But then we look into the overall. So overall, there's been an overall decrease of 39% compared from last year to this year in activity as far as arrests, notice to appears, and civil citations. If you look at it by agency, so for Lee County Sheriff's Office, they went down 40%, 100 from 289 type of, again, incidents of arrests, notice to appears, and civil citations down to 174, which is 40% decrease. Fort Myers Police Department saw a decrease of 29%, and Cape Coral saw a decrease of 42% decrease, again, since we have had OpenGate in all of our school sites. So again, this is just another graph to kind of show the difference, but I thought it was pretty significant because, again, like I said, not knowing the answer to that question, is there a correlation from OpenGate to incidents that occur at our schools? Will it make a difference? Has it made a difference? So I was happy to see the data that it showed in comparison to mid-year from last year to mid-year to this year. And obviously, we'll continue to monitor that progress. We get a full year as we go forward. But I thought it was very interesting data to share with all of you when you hear about OpenGate and at our school sites. And then this is another breakdown. Basically, if you go individually, for give you an example, so for Lee County Sheriff's Office in 2023, there was a total of 82 arrests, down to 57 in 2024. Another example, if you look at Cape Coral Police Department for notice to appears, they went from 239 to 112. So those are significant ones I pull out of the data to kind of show you the big decrease in change. But so I thought it was very important to share that with all of you today and to answer any questions you may have.
Superintendent and board, do you have any comments? Dr. Carlin?
Yes, if I may, just thank you to Mr. Newland. As you know, safety and security is my top priority coming into this district, and so I've asked Mr. Newland to ensure that each and every workshop, we provide an update for you on where we stand relative to this very important issue. He brought this data forward to us in cabinet. We were thrilled. Obviously, you see most areas experiencing a decline, and so we wanted to make sure we share this with you. So we look forward to your conversation today.
Mr. Persons?
Excuse me. Two things. One, I really appreciate the last slide, breaking it out, the arrests, the civil, notice to appear. Are we the only school district in Florida that has open gate at every school? Or are some others caught up to it?
I know some of the schools have, or the districts have some of their school sites. I'm not sure if any of them have 100% all of them covered at this point. I know I've had a lot of them that have made contact with us. They have come down here to see how we run the program with Open Gate, even out of state as well. But I don't know of any that have every school covered as of yet. I'm not sure about that.
Well, I really appreciate your guidance, keeping us right in the forefront of
You're welcome.
safety. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
Just a question regarding like slide 5, and I see that everything has decreased. So, but what does this equate to as far as how many schools? I think that would be good too to see. So is it 20 schools versus, 20 schools in the unincorporated versus 5 schools in the city of Fort Myers, or 10 in Cape? So how are we doing compared to the schools? And is there something maybe we could do more of in those certain areas?
Yeah, good question.
Does that make
So
sense?
I have, and it's too much to show, but I have a lot of
Yeah.
all the raw data that breaks it down by school site, by month, type of violation, everything. And I can tell you that I have seen a decline in all of them. There's nothing that I know of that's jumped out that's increased, that's gone the opposite direction. If anything, everything's gone decrease, or maybe a couple have stayed the same that have very minimal activity, but overall, it's been every school I've seen a decline, especially on certain. If I saw a major issue on a topic of last year, like I mentioned, for example, Mariner High School had a lot of civil citations or notice to appears for nicotine violations, for example. Those have significantly declined since Open Gate's been put in place because of the vaping. So that shows that's working.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation, Chief, and thank you. I'm a big fan of Open Gate. Question out of this, could it be said that besides, deterring access from things going into school, could it be argued that it's a deterrent to anyone going on a school campus?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have, we put together a lot of protocol for anybody coming onto campus, or at least the process of coming into the building, you have to go through the system first as well, too. So I think from what I've heard, it is deterrent as well, plus knowing that you have to go through this to enter the building.
Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Thank you, Chief Newland. This is actually great, and I'm glad we're able to talk about that. This safety was a big deal. I remember talking about this back in 2017, before having metal detectors, and I think this was a great compromise, because it's not quite a metal detector, but it is in the sense it really is beneficial. And so I'm so glad that we have it now, because especially a year after Parkland, I remember at the time with Sheriff Mike Scott said he actually recommended metal detectors at that time, saying that it's a deterrent, and that is the key to make someone think twice about coming to the school with a weapon. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I had one, I guess, request, or maybe it's an additional breakout, and Mr. Fisher kind of hit on this, but I'd be curious to see what it is for the student versus parent or guest breakout for citation. So when we're talking about students coming on campus, coming in the morning, checking in, versus parents coming onto the campus to pick up students, or what that looks like, what that citation breakout would look like.
I can go through some of the raw data after today and get that information to you. It's very minimal, but I can definitely show you that the ones we have shown as far as adults versus students
Right.
to the
Perfect.
main entryway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Newland. The only question I had was, while all these metal detectors are in play, and it seems that, or weapons detectors, it seems that you have a decline. I do still often out in the community get emails, and then when I'm, even at an activity on school campuses, that there are still some like hot spots in certain schools of where students are congregating, and whether it be inside the school or outside in like a parking lot, there's always these little areas that they seem to be. How do we manage that? How are we keeping an eye on those hot spots that are on some of our campuses?
Well, we asked them if we get that information gets to us somehow, and sometimes I do receive some information, we'll relay that to that local law enforcement agency that is over that school to look at those areas, whether it be outside or inside, or even there are some things sometimes how students may attempt to bring something into the school a certain way, and we hear other students talking to us and share that information with others so we can be ahead of it. But obviously never be complacent, always looking for just moving forward and the continuous training. And as we learn new things with the system, we always try to make sure we put that out to everybody as well to keep training and moving forward on new techniques and things you may catch.
Okay.
Ms. Fleming, if I may also,
Yes, please.
any constituents that would have any concerns, we always encourage them to go to the principal and let them know about situations. We have cameras at schools, and we have other things at schools, but the best line of defense is always the people. So anything you see that may look out of order, as Mr. Newland mentioned, we want to make sure we bring that to the administration's attention so that they are looking for those types of things and can address them.
Thank you. See something, say something, right? Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is our construction change order for December 2024. Our presenters this afternoon are Tina Silcox and Melissa Rivera.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Carlin, and Board Attorney Dodig. Good afternoon. It's nice to be here today. Scott's out, so I'm presenting in his place. Melissa and I are presenting to you the December 2024 change order report. If you look at the front page, there are 0 direct material change orders. We have $93,447.92 for non-direct material purchases and 0 contingency adjustments. And if you look on the second page, the change order report consists of 8. There's 2 that are $0 amount change orders extending the substantial completion date. 5 reductions to the contracts, returning approximately $175,000 of unused funds back to the district, and 1 direct material purchase reconciliation. Do you have any questions?
Board members, any questions? Ms. Jordan?
Hi, Tina, thank you. The one for Riverdale, every time I see Riverdale, I get like in my stomach. So this is something, that money that we're seeing on here, that is already, it's in
So,
a pocket for us to be spending, right? It's not,
yes, ma'am, we did not increase their original contract amount. That funding was pulled out of their contract for a direct material purchase to save taxes for kitchen equipment. We reused kitchen equipment or did not need some, so we canceled the whole DMP, the direct material purchase order. And that will go back into their contract. And once, and then we will move that into contingency to be used for other things, or it will be returned to the district.
okay, because I know even when the public sees the school, it's like, okay, what are we doing now? So thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Ribble?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you on another $93,447 returned to the district. That always sets the tone for your presentation when we see these refunds. So it's a nice trend. So keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Next is the 2025-26 Code of Conduct for Students. This will be our first briefing, followed by the 25-26 Code of Conduct for Adult Students, also first briefing. Thank you for presenting this afternoon, Dr. Jessica Duncan and Chuck Bradley.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Carlin, and Attorney Dodick. Thank you for the opportunity to come back to you today with our first reading for the Code of Conduct. So, and if you could see in the presentation on the last slide talks about our timeline, but I'm actually going to start with that today. So when we met with you last time, that was our pre-briefing. So we got your feedback, you had some questions, and since that time we've done quite a few things. We've had a survey that have gone out to all parents. We've met with our principal leads. We've met with DAC. We've met with the Behavior and Discipline Task Force twice. And we've met with the Teacher Task Force twice. So we have some things that will look familiar from our last discussion, and then a couple of just new informational pieces. And then today we will also get through your discussion, your thoughts, and then we'll come back to you in March with the final code. So basically whatever we come to today, you'll see reflected in the final code that will come back to you in March.
All right. So our agenda for today, we're going to look at some review of our feedback groups for the 2025-2026 code, and then also review our proposed updates for the 2025-2026 code. So some of our feedback groups, of course, that we mentioned previously that we've been to, we have met with our administrators and deans. We've met with our teacher task force, and we just finished up with them this last week. We have met with students, our student advisory group, Success Academy students, and we've also met with some students at Gateway High School and Mariner High School. We met with our Behavior and Discipline Task Force in multiple meetings between November and January. We have met with our District Advisory Council just recently, and we've held several student services community conversations, one in each region, as well as one here at LCPEC. We've met with Superintendent's Cabinet, and we have engaged in survey collection with a substantial survey that was provided through Harns Marsh Middle, and we've also met with Talc and Spalk.
So for the Behavior Discipline Task Force, just to review this quickly, because this, again, we presented at the last meeting, we have members of the Community Task Force, a variety of members, including law enforcement, Talc and Spalk, district leaders, parents, advocates, and we met with them to talk about our current discipline. We did review the code, also to talk about some recommendations, which at our last meeting, actually last two meetings were focused on recommendations. So our work right now in the spring will be to be reviewing those and seeing what we could implement in the fall. We also had our teacher task force, which was open to each school, and any schools provided the opportunity to provide input. And we also met with all administrators. So the changes that you will see that we are proposing, some of these we went through last time, and of course we'll be open to feedback, but we didn't get too much feedback the first time, so we won't spend too much time on those. We're looking to separate disrespect and insubordination into separate infractions so that we can do some data collection, because how we respond to those behaviors in the school looks also different. So we will look to separate those infractions. We're looking to amend the consequences for drug use and possession, and this means that there will be some additional opportunities for principals for consequences. We did have a Strive Academy open at Success Academy this year, and that's been very successful in supporting students. So we've been able to provide more options for different consequences, whether they be restorative or other consequences as part of the code. So in here for the biggest change was that a student previously could have up to a third infraction in a school without a recommendation for Success Academy. Next year, they could have a second infraction, and then a principal could recommend Success Academy after the second infraction.
So some other updates that we're proposing, we've updated web links and QR codes. We also are proposing changes to the consequences for bullying. The current level is level 4. We're proposing that be changed to level 3 with the option for a Success Academy Review Committee meeting and potential placement at Success Academy. We also are recommending changes to the consequences to sexual offenses. Our current code, first and repeated, are level 3 with the option of a SARC review for the repeated. We're proposing that we delineate between minor sexual offenses and major sexual offenses, with minor offenses being level 3 and repeated with a level 3 with a SARC review, and major offenses being moved to a level 2. We then are proposing some changes to our electronic and telecommunications devices policy. This is our current policy, which does say that students may possess cell phones and other personal electronics while on school grounds, but they must be turned off at all times unless utilized for an appropriate approved activity. And then possession of all personal electronics, including cell phones, is at the student's own risk. And this is just our policy regarding theft or loss.
So at our first pre-briefing, what we shared was some input from some of the schools, particularly at the high school level, that was requesting that the board consider some discretion, potentially in passing or in cafeterias. We did get the feedback from the board, so we'll revisit that feedback today. We also, through this, met with our leadership teams, and regardless of the direction we go with this, whether it's bell to bell, restriction, or whether there is some opportunity for students to use them, we made some additional considerations, which, next slide, are some updates to the infractions. So because of the current legislation where students cannot use cell phones in the classroom, we did increase the school level response so that schools have an increased response to students who do break that, who do commit that infraction in the school. So you can see there, we went from, on the bottom, where we have it is, went from a level 2 with a SARC review, or if it's repeated, directly to a level 2. So our expectation at a minimum is to follow the law, which is no cell phones in the classroom. So our code is reflecting that. We also made some updates where you could see where we added the bus. So if we're looking particularly at a bell-to-bell, one of the questions was transportation. Transportation is not necessarily included bell-to-bell, but we do have an expectation that students follow this code on the bus as well. So we wanted to delineate that our expectation is that the code is followed here. And for first and repeated, where we had a level 3, we have a level 3 with SARC review and a level 2.
So we did gather information regarding wireless communication devices through a survey which ran from January 13th to January 27th. It was located on our website, and information also went out to our schools messenger through school messenger to all families. We had over 5,000 responses as of January 24th, and 94% of the respondents were parents. So to the question, I agree with the restriction of wireless communication device use during the instructional day, as long as students can access it from their backpack in case of an emergency. 85.3% of respondents replied yes. And to the question, which of the following most likely would most likely improve with a restriction of WCDs during the school day? You can see that increase in academic performance was the number one. And then we go to, I do not believe any of these will improve, was our number 2. However, taken together, increase in academic performance, increase in positive social interactions, reduction in bullying, and reduction in peer conflicts were by far in the majority.
And in the survey, when asked, when considering wireless communication devices, 28.5 were concerned that they wouldn't be able to reach their student in case of emergency. And so that's expected, and that is something that we've addressed in the code, where we are saying that if students do not have them, that they're put away and off in their bags. So they are still accessible to our students. 35%, the largest group, did feel that the disadvantages of wireless communication outweigh any advantages. And the additional considerations. So as we met with our lead and our principal groups, and there are considerations that we'll have to make. So even if we're bell to bell, these are things and conversations that will have to happen in each school, particularly the high school, because our elementary and middle don't have cell phones right now. So some things I talked about was we still need to make sure we're preparing students for phone use after high school. In some ways, phones can increase positive interactions. Maybe there's some things that students interact with them through games or something they're doing in the cafeteria. The impact of phone collection in relation to new laws. So our doors are closed in our schools. So with key personnel at the doors, schools will have to consider what that means for cell phone collections. And then monitoring collection, where if you're collecting them or you're in the hallway or at those things, what does that collection process look like? So these were considerations that they brought up. They did share that whichever way the board goes, they are prepared and ready to follow the board direction and the district policy. And just wanted to ensure that we as a team and with our district, with our stakeholder groups and with our board, that we've looked at all of these considerations, considered all of the pros and the cons, and that whichever way we go, that we feel strongly that that is the best way for students, and that is what we will adhere to and move forward with.
Just to revisit our timeline, of course, we're at this board first reading here in February. We do anticipate bringing the final version of the Code of Conduct for 2025-2026 to the board action meeting in March. And then, of course, we'll finalize, print, and distribute in June. At this time, we turn it over to Dr. Carlin and the board for comments and discussion.
So thank you very much, and a special thank you to Dr. Duncan and Mr. Bradley for all of your hard work, as well as your team. I know that you have been working diligently with staff, with cabinet, with principals, with our parents, via that survey input, and of course our board. So just thank you to you and your team for all of your hard work. This does not go unnoticed by the board and myself. So basically at this point, we turn it over to the board, and we look forward to your feedback and your conversation today.
Mr. Ribble.
Yeah, I'd just like to make one comment here. Depending on which way the board goes, I want them to consider the fact that we need to be consistent in what we do. We can't have one school going to the left, another school going to the right, because when we have a grievance come up or we have litigation come up, the first thing they're going to present is that we're not consistent in our policies. So I think we have to really think long and hard about which way we want to go and make sure that we're not going to do a cookie cutter or a hodgepodge of enforcement. That's all my comments.
Mr. Persons?
Yeah, I'm totally for the phones from first bell to last bell remaining in the backpack. There's been so many articles and data from other schools that has definitely helped. You know, they've had, and not just from Florida, these have been national articles from other places. And that's the easiest way to be consistent. You're not only consistent for elementary, middle school, and high school. I've had emails saying, well, we want our child to have a cell phone at all times, but no one has sent me an email that says why they need to have their cell phone on or to be able to use it. So there's a want versus a need. And other than the couple exceptions there for health, you know, they need a cell phone to be able to monitor, like, you know, sugar or something along those lines. But that's just where I'm at.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Thank you. So as I've been to schools and spoke to teachers, and actually recently at the finalist for the Golden Apple, I asked different teachers randomly what they thought of it. They said that the students are, if they have it in the hallways and if they have the phones in the lunchroom, they still manage to meet up and do the things that they shouldn't be doing with the phones. And that was a big eye-opener. However, a school, speaking of being consistent, Gateway has no tolerance at all. They do not have it in the hallway, and they do not have it in the lunchroom. And there was teachers that supported the principal in that. So I asked for data because I believe that it would lower infractions that we have based without having the phones from other districts that have a no tolerance, cell phone tolerance. Because I would love to see, I believe that student achievement has gone up when they don't have the phones at all, as well as children are engaged with each other because they're left with no other choice because they don't have to engage with the phone. So I think I was told that the lunchroom atmospheres are better. I mean, it's just, I'd love to see the data because I believe it's all positive without the cell phones. I believe the cell phones is more negative. So hearing what the teachers that are in the classroom every day deal with the phones and would rather not deal with the phones, I'm leaning towards no phone tolerance, not even in the hallways or at lunch. It can be in the backpack, but for the children to be able to access during an emergency, I guess, I would agree with that. But I am leaning, after speaking to many teachers, they say the positives outweigh the negatives by far. And I think if that's, I mean, that is what our job is, to make sure that children have the best education with no distractions. The phone still continues to be a distraction, and where they do the meetup, have the fights. They even take it one step further, I was told, where that they break up their own fight before the other teachers get there to break it up, because then they won't get an infraction. So they outsmart us every step of the way. Because you should never underestimate a child. So that is my concern. The other concern that I had that you mentioned was the sexting, minor and major offenses. And I'm anything with sexual content for me is a slippery slope. So, and then who determines what's minor and what's major. To me, it would be all, anything sexting would be major for children to be involved in, because there's something going on more than just them being silly with their phone that they shouldn't be, which is back to using your phone. So I think that was another concern when you mentioned that the levels and minor and major, because I was thinking, okay, what's minor, and then who determines that? What maybe I might think everything's major, maybe I am wrong, but I think the parents are the ones that should have a say as well as what they think is deemed appropriate for their child. But still, as a board, we should have some kind of guidelines that's appropriate and not appropriate. And sexting to me is not appropriate regardless of what the content is. So that was just a couple of things that I had. I would love to see, again, the data for not having cell phone usage, if that would lower infractions, and the evidence, and plus increase student achievement. I know the evidence, the data is out there, but I would like to have seen that today. Thank you. But thank you for this.
Mr. Fisher, then we'll go to Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. After looking at the pros and cons, I support bell to bell for all grade levels. Again, our number one focus needs to be academic achievement. Obviously, discipline's with an issue. I have not seen, and I want to say I appreciate our administrators. I've talked to a bunch of them and teachers and looked through the materials they've provided. But at this point, in order to further what we need to do, I support bell to bell on that. I don't see where the cons outweigh the pros for this. There's too much distraction. There's concerns about fights. As I said, I mean, obviously kids do have to understand how to use technology in this world, and we do work with them, whether it's in the Chromebooks and stuff like that, but there's also plenty of time outside of school that can be dealt with by the parents. As I said, outside of that, everything else, the code of conduct, I don't have any other issues with at the moment. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I was at the DAC, and everybody was really concerned with the consistency, so thank you for bringing that up. That is a huge factor. Also, I was looking, because we have earbuds, we have all of that, those devices, but we don't have lately when I'm at the schools, I'm seeing them with the headphone, is it headphones?
Hoodies over the headphones.
Yeah, the headphones like over your ear, so they're listening to something with the headphones walking in the hallways. So, and I see that that's not on there, but my concern was, and maybe I misunderstood, on the bus. The drivers are trying to drive a bus. How in the heck are we going to be asking them to now police these kids pulling out a phone? I think that's a bit much to ask of them. So I'm just a little bit concerned with that, because they really need to be focusing on the traffic and getting our kids home safe. So when they're in school and they walk off that bus and they're inside those classrooms, they walk through that door, I mean, I'm all for that. But when they get out of that school and on a bus, I just think that's a lot to ask for a bus driver and everything else that they have to do. That's my personal opinion. Safety first. Thank you.
Do you have something? Ms. Chaviano, go ahead.
Thank you guys for bringing this information again, and second, curious to see what the referrals are specifically to cell phone use, because I know specifically in some schools, and I've spoken to some parents where there's a point where parents have to go pick up the phones from the schools, right? And there's those pieces, and I have a middle schooler who I pulled their phone from, and they still get information of fights that are happening when they don't have their phone, and they still get the updates when peers share. And in the last conversation, I'd mentioned, seeing no purpose in having a phone in the hallway, and kind of understanding having it during lunchtime. My concern is the lack of conversation with their peers, right? I fully support a bell-to-bell schedule. Our kids are better at technology than we are at this point. I don't think they really need to. They're more prepared for the real world and technology, I think, than we are at this point. I think they need to understand the impacts of social media and what that is in the real world at this point. I would like to see an addition to the items with smart glasses, because those are out there as well. So adding that as a device, because there are students that do have the smart glasses and you can take pictures and record and make phone calls with those. So I would like to see that added. But yeah, other than that, I think I'm in support with the bell to bell. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan, I understand what you're saying on the bus. It doesn't say they can't be on while they're on the bus. It just says they can't be used improperly. They can't be sexting, they can't be bullying, they can't be filming fights. I think that's what they're after. Because several parents actually asked they be on because they're actually better at tracking where the bus is by using Find a Phone, tracking the phone where their child is. So if that's that's how I read it, but I don't know.
Correct. So when you see the infractions, so like here, unauthorized taping, photographing or posting of social media, of disruption on campus, it previously just said on campus, and we've now included the bus. On campus always included the bus to us, but we wanted to put that out there directly so that there was no misunderstanding that we expect the rules to be followed on the bus. And while our driver's first priority is to be driving and ensuring our kids are safe, if they engage in one of these infractions, that the code will still apply to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for clarifying that.
Mr. Fisher?
One last thing, sorry, I forgot to talk about. I know there's also some underlying concern that if we pass this and go through, that parents will come and petition us and they'll want to change our minds, which again, they're free to do, but I mean, part of our job as a board to make tough decisions and stick by them. So I just wanted to make sure to reiterate that to everyone. So we've had, whether it's high schools, rebuilding schools, things like that, a lot of tough decisions, and people come and petition us, and that's their right. But as I said, I don't see any issue, again, with this board, as I said, going back on that. So I just wanted to reiterate that to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Ribble. You nailed exactly what I had written down already, is consistency is key across the district, K through 12, because that's how, I feel like that's how our administrators kind of get in trouble, if you will. So not to mention, if consistency is across the district, then there is no this teacher allows it, this teacher doesn't. And to me, it takes the pressure off of the teacher, and they can do their job. It also takes the pressure off the administrator having to police those types of classrooms. I'm really glad to see that there were, I think, 5,000 plus participants, but we have 100,000 students, and that's a great number, but I would love to see more participants, and I understand that 94% were adults. So maybe a suggestion on how we can get these surveys, just more participation when we send any survey out. I know we sent another survey out right before we went up to Tallahassee about some questions, and obviously we're seeking out our community's opinions. So we welcome them. I just would love to see more participation, and I don't know if that's something we actually reach out to our news media. If they're covering what's going on in Lee County School District, perhaps they could, say, hey, there's an opportunity for you all to take this survey, and have the link up there. I mean, I'd love for our media to connect with us on that. And then as far as the infractions, this is something a little bit different. I think I've been really vocal about my support with bell to bell and cell phone. So I guess for the record, I'll say it again. But when it comes to infractions, and I'm not sure if this is Dr. Carlin, a question for you or for you folks over here. How are we getting our parents to really understand these levels of infraction? I understand it because I was a teacher, and I'm on the board, so I'm reading this. But I think we have so many parents that truly, when their child does get in trouble, and they get that phone call from the office, how are we explaining these levels of infraction to where they can really understand and grasp? To me, that could be real foreign language to some of our families.
So I'll take a stab at it. So as a principal, one of the things that I required our team to do was to make sure that the code of conduct got to the parents. And so then there was the signature that was indicating that they had read it. And then taking those opportunities, an open house and other opportunities to share that information. Again, that's only as good as parents coming in. And then as an assistant principal, I wore that hat for 5 years, taking the time, the root of the word discipline in Latin is to teach. And so many times it wasn't just teaching the child about what happened and what will happen next, but also conveying to the parent as the assistant principal, here's what's next, here's why this is a level 3 or why it's a level 1 to that extent. And so those are opportunities for us as we continue to work through the, leadership development work that we are doing right now to redesign our leadership development program, is to make sure that our aspiring leaders and our assistant principals and principals incorporate those types of practices. So many of them do, but we do have a fair number of new leaders in our district, and so we'll want to make sure we convey those best practices to our leaders. So thank you for that.
So just to follow up, I know we print I know we have a link to our code of conduct, and the fact that you all have shortened it and condensed it is, I hear positive feedback about that all the time, and I appreciate it as a parent, but is there somewhere within that code of conduct that are examples of infractions that a parent can just be like, okay, they keep talking about this level 1 or level, is there a list or a list of examples built in?
So a couple of pieces. We do have that for our administrators, but we can certainly prepare something that would be appropriate for our parents that we have accessible to them on the website. That would be something that we could do fairly easily. So I think that's a great suggestion. Also wanted to speak quickly to the data. So when we look at a school like Gateway and we pull their data and we look from semester 1 this year to semester, we see great data and reductions. Sort of in line with Mr. Newland shared right before us, we're seeing that across the board. So it's a little bit difficult for us to say what is specifically about cell phones or what behaviors are related to cell phones. On our referrals right now, if we have an infraction, we can tell if there's a drug or alcohol, if there's something related to that, because we have an area that we would mark. And we had talked about having our referrals reflect something about wireless communication, because even if it's insubordination, we can't tell if that's related to a cell phone or something like maybe a student got an insubordination infraction, but it was started with a cell phone. And it's not listed then under electronic communication devices. So if we were to add something, we would be able to pull some better data for you. So we have data for each school, which we can provide, you can look at, and certainly with a Gateway, who's been doing this now for 3 years, one of the things the principal shared was this year she really engaged the teachers, and that made a substantial difference. And one of their numbers right now, last year, they have about half of the electronic communication device infractions that they had last year. So you can really see that in her implementation. And of course, because she has been implementing, she's going to be a source of information for us, and we're going to be going to her for several things, as we have up to this point. But that is something with data that will give us better information, because right now, there's a lot of infractions that could have potentially started with a cell phone, but end up with a different code. Then thank you for that information, the suggestion about the parent information. I think that's something we can easily do. We also have our community conversations that we offer to parents. So we go out into each region with our whole team. So we will continue to do that and hope to engage more parents there. And just before, I don't know if there's any other information, but Dr. Carlin talked about the team, and I would be remiss not to thank the people who were not up here with us today, Rob Cooper, Roger Lloyd, and Rachel Gould, who are our regional directors, who were critical in not only the development, but the facilitation of many meetings, evening meetings, community meetings, so want to thank them as well. And we hear your input. And so when you see the code in March, what you will see reflected is in the electronic communication device section will be a bell-to-bell restriction. So when you see that come, that's what you will see in March.
Thank you. Ms. Fleming, based on what you were just speaking about, that has always been a concern, where the parents and the signatures, how many signatures, and I know that we have requested and we have received, it's been a while since we received that number of what parents or who, the demographics of who did not actually sign that. So of course, when they did not sign, do they understand? No, they don't understand because they haven't signed it. And I know that's been an issue. I brought that up. I bring it up every year because every year that this comes up, it's like, okay, how do we ensure that our parents are reading this? Because we all read, make sure that we understand what's taking place with our children. How do we make sure that all the other ones are doing it? And I know that at one point in time, they said the school was reaching out to parents who had not yet filled that out, but putting those links, like you said, I think is an excellent idea, because people do need the understanding of what that actually means for their children. But again, how do we, once this is finished, how do we make sure that everybody is signing this? So again, we're in that situation where these children are getting these infractions, and but I really appreciate everything you just said.
Thank you. Dr. Carlin?
Yes, and thank you, Ms. Jordan. And we'll be happy to provide that data, just so, and maybe a 5-year look at it, so we can actually have some comparative data. One thing that I will say is elected officials, we also have an opportunity to engage with our families, right? So our schools work extraordinarily hard to get this information out, and many of you are connected with your schools. But I can tell you, as elected officials, we have such a wonderful opportunity to incorporate this conversation when we go out and speak with our constituents. So I would say we can be a value add to what the schools are already doing to increase that number.
Thank you. If there are no more comments about this, would you like to move on to the adult student? Okay.
So with the adult code in our pre-briefing, we shared that. I think the biggest change really is that we now have that in both Creole and Spanish, which we haven't, and we're excited to have that available in those languages. There were no recommendations at that time. The changes were fairly minimal to that adult code. So at this time, there are no additional changes than what were presented at the pre-briefing.
Are there any comments, questions? Okay. Thank you. All right, we will move on. Next is Human Resource Division Outcomes. Angela Montemurano will be presenting to us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, members of the board, Superintendent Carlin, Attorney Dodick. Today, I'm here to represent Human Resources and present to you our strategic plan update, the outcomes that we have had for last year. I'm going to be sharing some key developments and achievements as we move on with the HR transformation. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about the HR transformation, the HR key performance indicators, program highlights, short-term priorities, and long-term goals. So as you can see here, we did start out as a part of the HR transformation. We set some initial priorities to build a strong foundation for our initiatives. I'm pleased to announce that we've successfully completed the following. The Evergreen Compensation Study, Phase 1. This was crucial in ensuring our compensation practices remain competitive and equitable. The integration of professional development into the main HR umbrella. We have finalized this integration and bringing that back to HR. We have created 2 new departments underneath Human Resources. Talent Management. This new department will focus on reviewing systems to evaluate performance, identifying areas of improvement, and recognizing high performers. We've also added on the Field Operations Department, in which we will be having the human resource business partners that are going to be the representatives out in the schools to provide the support that the schools need. Additionally, we're currently progressing on several key projects still in the works. So our PeopleSoft optimization, this is, we're actively working to optimize this PeopleSoft system to improve the efficiency and the user experience. So that is still ongoing. And the integration of employee relations, and as I stated, the HR business partners. This integration aims to streamline processes, improve collaboration, and ensure that our HR services are responsive and aligned with the employee needs. So looking at our HR key performance indicators, we're going to specifically focus on strategic priority 3, which was the recruiting, developing, and retaining highly effective staff. When we look at our key performance indicator 6.1, this was reducing employee turnover for each segment. So we're looking to and really retain our workforce here. And then we're also going to look at our KPI 7.2, which also aims to increase the percentage of employees who report having received meaningful feedback and the opportunity to learn and grow within the organization. By us focusing on these areas, we believe we can create a more dynamic and engaged workforce. So on KPI 6.1, as you can see here in this chart, this data displays the work of reducing employee turnover for each employee segment. The official baseline, as you can see here, this was from October of 2023. Our turnover for fiscal year 24 was 15.6% in the teacher sector, 15% in the support staff sector, and 8% in the admin. The strategic plan requires a current target and a 4-year performance targets where our goal is to reduce employee turnover by 1% each year. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics states that the average turnover rate to be between 12 and 15% in all sectors. And as you can see, we are seeing a decline here. So as we're looking at KPI 7.2, again, this was to increase the percent of employees that report having received meaningful feedback and the opportunity to learn and grow. So we looked at the new teacher training camp participation retention. So when we look at this, we see the retention rates over the past 2 years for these of our teaching staff, teachers with less than 3 years in the classroom, and our first-year instructors steadily increasing. And this program has been very successful, the new teacher program, training camp, excuse me. So now when we're talking about leading measures, this graph displays our school-based instructional retirements in blue and separations in orange. Separations are considered to be employees who left the district. The gray line displays the number of hires that we've had. For fiscal year 24, staff had hired 624 instructional staff, but we did lose 801 instructional staff members. This slide now is showing you the total instructional turnover by fiscal year and breaks down the 2 categories that make up turnover. Transfers and separations are the 2 categories that make this up. Transfers are employees that move job locations or positions within the district. Regardless, each action represents a transaction that occurs in both HR and at the work site. For the past year, we experienced an increase in employee transfer, which led to a higher turnover rate. On this next slide, I do want to let you know that the slide that you received there is incorrect. You will be receiving slide 9 after the meeting and updated to this. What I'm showing you on the screen is the updated slide, so I just want to let you know if you're looking at your screen there. This slide is representing the hiring, retirements, and separation of non-instructional staff. Non-instructional staff includes support staff in the SPALC unit and the salary schedule N unit. As indicated, we hired 1,001 support staff members in fiscal year '24, and 722 non-instructional staff members left the district. This does not mean that we have full employment of support staff, because this data does not include the vacancies that existed in these groups at the beginning of the fiscal year. So taking that into consideration. Looking at this slide represents the percentage of non-instructional turnover by fiscal year. We had a significant decrease here in fiscal year '24, year over year, which is positive for the district. Transfers stayed identical year to year, but separations are at 15.08%, with our goal indicated earlier to be reduced to the 14%. We've successfully aligned our in-person training with our administrative assistants, enhancing our overall operational effectiveness. This program has really seen great things. To improve the customer service experience, we removed the TB test and the physical requirements for employment, and now accept electronic transcripts, streamlining the hiring process for our new hires. We've completed phase 1 of the Evergreen Compensation Study, which has set a solid foundation for equitable compensation practices. And thanks to a strong partnership with Kelly Services, we have increased our fill rates from 69.1% a year ago to an impressive 93.5% since February 26th of 2024 to current. Our talent acquisition team has enhanced marketing strategies and outreach efforts to bolster recruitment. Our new teacher training camp has been instrumental in new teacher retention, resulting in 88% retention rate amongst our first-year teachers who attended this new teacher training camp. We are excited to share these impactful highlights that showcase our commitment to continuous improvement and effective HR practices. So looking at some of our short-term priorities and our long-term priorities, our number 1 here is recruitment realignment project, which with Dr. Carlin has been one of her main focuses, is the recruitment. Our focus is on optimizing and restructuring the recruitment process to better align with our current organizational needs and goals. This will enhance our ability to attract top talent and streamline hiring processes. Our next is phase 2 of the Evergreen Compensation Project study. In this phase, we will build on our initial findings to further refine and expand our compensation structures, ensuring they remain competitive, equitable, and aligned with industry standards. For our long-term goals, we have the HR transformation. We're committed to continuing the evolution of our HR strategies, systems, and processes, ensuring they remain agile and aligned with the organization's future objectives. The ongoing transformation will support greater efficiency, innovation, and employee engagement. In addition, for a long-term goal is our PeopleSoft enhancement. Our long-term strategy includes the continuous enhancement of PeopleSoft to ensure it remains a robust and effective tool for managing HR functions. These improvements will support our evolving needs and optimize the user experience for both employees and HR professionals. At this time, superintendent comments and board discussion.
Thank you very much, Ms. Montemarino. Appreciate you and your team for all of the work that you continue to do in HR. Board members, as you know, one of our top priorities, in addition to school safety and increasing student achievement, has to do with teacher retention and recruitment. And so HR, I'm very proud of them. They've been very laser-like focused on making sure that we hold on to the teachers that we have and the staff that we have in partnership with our schools and departments. They can't do it by themselves. This is really a team effort. And then, of course, recruitment. You've heard me speak many times about when I was sworn into office, well over 200 teacher vacancies, and I think that number is down to, Ms. Martin Marino?
187.
187, so we're going in the right direction from about 230 to 187, and we're working our way to zero, and that's going to be within the next couple of months, so that's our commitment. And we're saying it out loud because we
Yes.
mean it. So we look forward to your comments and your questions relative to HR's presentation, the strategic plan outcomes.
Thank you. Mr. Persons?
I had a question. What is the turnaround for, let's say, a teacher or a paraprofessional walks in today, with the application and everything they need, or does whatever they're supposed to do online? How long until they're actually vetted and put into a position?
It's a process, I'm going to tell you that, and I don't have an exact number to give you, but I will get you some figures for that. But I will tell you that one of the challenges is from start to finish, when that first comes over from the school with what we call forward to hire, and then we have to start the background check as well as do their credentials in terms, I'm talking about a teacher, where credentials have to be met in order for them to become a teacher. So it sometimes takes 2 months, it could be a little less, it could be a little bit more. I can get you some figures on that on averages, though.
I would love there's some way to put one person in charge of another person and walk them through it, just stay on it every day until they, because we're in such dire need.
Understood.
Yeah,
Understood, and there is something I will say, Mr. Persons, that we are working on. We have enhanced our onboarding process, and that has really made a very big difference and has decreased our times in that regard. We've also having, as I mentioned earlier, the administrative assistant training that we've been doing has really been very beneficial in order getting that information from the school to our HR department. As soon as we receive it in Human Resources, we're acting and we're moving on that, as well as looking at the communication with each and every applicant or new hire, as we would call them at that point, making sure that there's a touch point, that we are touching them, we're talking to them, and making sure that we're not losing them because they've had no contact. So in the last year that I've been here, that's been a priority of mine, is making sure that as we identify these candidates and people that we wish to hire, we are having full contact with them.
Well, thank you. I would love to see that gotten down to 1 month.
I would love
that's
to,
really where it needs to be.
and we are
people just
working
lose their
towards that.
interest.
For sure.
Yeah, I want to work, and then nothing happens for 2 months. Thank you.
For sure.
Ms. Shaviano?
Thank you for putting the presentation together. I had a question on slide 7. So 801 for the separation. Do we have exit interviews completed for them when they leave that highlight where they're going, since they're not
Sure.
going, I guess, within the district? Because I'm going to assume that on slide 8, where it shows there's a transfer versus a separation, for that 15.64%, that's a separation. Do we know where they're going?
Correct. So one of the things that we're looking to enhance in our PeopleSoft optimization is the different, when we go in and somebody leaves and separates from employment with us, is to have a better, I'm going to call it a category in terms of how we are putting them in a why they're leaving.
Right.
Once we are able to optimize and get that data, we will be able to provide the board with much more specific data as to where people are going. And for example, just to use an example, we have a category called personal. So if an administrative system, when they go in and put in that paperwork, if they put personal, we don't know what the definition of that personal is. So we're looking to enhance that so that I can provide you that data in the future.
Thank you. So then on slide 8, where it shows that 15.64%, is that based off of the 801? That's separated completely?
I have to get back to you on that because this includes transfers. When it talks about turnover, when in prior, the separation talks about people that have left. This now includes people that have transferred. So excuse me, I take that back. Transfer outs are the blue.
Right.
And the separations are the 15.64, yes.
And that would be based off the
Sorry.
801?
That is yes.
Okay. Okay, so then on slide 11, where we talk about marketing, do you know what those strategies and outreaches
Yes.
are? Can you share those?
Yeah, so we've engaged just recently with our current marketing vendor that we have, and we are doing increased in regards to broadcasting, which will include radio, some TV. We are doing more digital outreach that's going out. These are things that we have not done in the past that now we are looking to increase and do that now to get to our goal for May 1st.
Are these in market or out of market broadcast? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'd have to get back to you. I don't have the specifics of where we're going right now. We haven't finalized that particular plan.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what that strategy is.
Sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Montemurano, for you and your team's hard work. So one of the things, and kind of piggybacking off of Mrs. Chaviano, one of the biggest things we've dealt with is transformation. The question is, how is our culture? And obviously, we need some measurements on that. I know that was one, exit survey. What about also getting some more metrics to measure that? I know Deputy Superintendent Savage, when he was superintendent, dealt with some feedback through Thought Exchange. So I'd like to see where we're at with our culture. Because one of the things, obviously, for example, in exit interviews, all of us, I'm sure, hear different things from different employees. But is that actually getting across? Are they telling HR when they're leaving? Are they telling, X, Y, and Z versus what we're hearing? So, because that's obviously some very constructive feedback we need on that.
Mr. Fisher, I didn't answer the question in regards to exit interviews,
Yes.
so I'm glad that you just brought
Yes.
that back up. So we have also re-looked at our exit interview process currently, and we have created a new tool, as well as with the HR business partners are going to be going out and ensuring that we're getting the exit interviews from those people that separate from the organization, so that again, we can provide additional data. Now, when we have those either conversations, they have the option to ask to speak with us, or they fill it out. There is more specific in trying to drill down the reason why people are leaving. And once I have data from that from a quarter, then we can start to provide data to you in regards to that. The past data, we did not get the participation that we needed. But now that we have the HR business partners, which will be a part of their role as well, because they'll be out in the schools, they'll know when people are leaving, they'll go to them personally and try, as well as talk to the new staff that are in the schools.
Agree. Thank you. I'd also like to see more current metrics, like I was talking about.
Absolutely.
Current personnel. I don't know if that's something we could. Thank you.
And we are doing stay interviews for the current personnel. So
Awesome.
that is in a pilot program right now. And as that pilot program, we tweak that out and we get ready to roll with that, we'll be able to provide you that data as well.
Okay, thank you. And my second part of this, PeopleSoft, where are our long-term goals on that? We had, and again, this is not on HR when I say this, we had a consultation that I feel that we've gotten zero value out of, so, and that has really not translated. So from your standpoint, where do we see PeopleSoft going?
So currently, as you know, we did engage with another, consultant that we are no longer engaged with. Moving forward, we are looking at, working with our internal staff and also brought on another company that can help us just taking what we have right now and trying to give us what the needs that we have. And they've been working diligently on that. In regards to the specifics, it's really hard to say, but I will say that there is opportunity for improvement. And the needs of what the district needs to come from PeopleSoft in order for us to be able to provide you the information and as well as us to recruit and retain our staff and to provide the data that is needed there.
So Mr. Fisher, what I hear is there's an opportunity for improvement there. Absolutely.
Yes, Madam Superintendent. Outside of that, last kind of question, just going back to data generally, I said I'd love to see, again, just some more general feedback for us and members of the public of some of our HR data and stuff like that. I know that's
Sure.
a work in progress, but I'd like to see more of that to kind of give all of us a big picture on that. So,
You got it.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Well, you both hit on the exit interviews, but no offense to you, but we've been asking for that. Prior boards have asked for it in the past, and I know you're really new to the job, so there's lots of things that has room for improvement. So thank you for this work. But we do need to, and thank you, Mr. Fisher, for asking for the data, because that's really, really important at this point in time, because my thought is, how do we keep them? It's retention, right? So how do we keep them even when we're losing them? Like, can we go to them and say, hey, what can we do to keep you? Even if it's changing schools, if it's at the school level. We should be going to miles try to keep our staff for the retention, and I don't think we act quickly enough in that situation. Also, this is actually for the superintendent. One of my things that I've brought up in the past is like the flexibility for, do we have options or the flexibility for new employees or even old employees, if they have health insurance through a spouse or another, can they opt to not take, like I don't take the health insurance. I don't get credit for it, but can they get credit for it? Or not even, maybe not full credit, but maybe half because I would believe that would not only lower our premiums, but lower our risk, because that would most health things would fall back on the spouse's insurance. So that's a savings, that's a possibility. I mean, and just having that flexibility as an employee, I think you might get someone that is allowed that flexibility, or you might keep them for that. So, I mean, I just think we have to think out of the box, and that was one of my thoughts. I've always kind of brought it up. Why do you have to take the insurance if you don't want? Like, I choose not to because my husband has it. I don't need to double dip because I'm never going to use it.
That's right.
So, and so it's that opportunity to be creative and giving that, even if it's, our insurance is quite expensive. So, and some people pay in, but what if they could get that $5,000 a year instead of we spending that? That saves us $5,000 basically, and that gives them $5,000 back in their pocket. So that's just some things that I think we should have, you can have conversations with your staff about, and maybe it's not possible, but if it is, that flexibility would be awesome, and that would help change culture, and I think bring more, more retention, or even bring in new employees for that option. Thank you. That's it.
Ms. Giovanelli, what I'll say is absolutely all of these ideas are in. We are really being very aggressive in our retention and recruitment efforts, as Ms. Moreno talked about. Everything's on the table right now because we have to make sure not only do we need to retain our employees in our schools, but also in this district office. There are numerous people, I will just say, being retired 17 months before I came into this job, that are no longer here. And I will say a fair amount of them were very talented people. So, and you spoke about culture a few minutes ago. That is super important, and that speaks to many reasons why people have left this building. I will share that personally. So we have to look at all facets of it, including compensation, benefits, and culture. So I want to applaud the board because you're hitting on all the areas that need to be carefully addressed. Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli, I will also just say, just to add to Dr. Carlin's comments, in regards to if you do not elect our insurance, we do have a very small payment that goes to employees that don't elect it, but you have to elect a voluntary benefit in order to receive it. And Dr. Carlin and I are working on looking and revisiting that. So yes, everything is on the table and we are looking at it, but yes, there is a small amount that they would receive now if they elect a voluntary benefit. Thank you. You're welcome.
Anyone else? Mr. Ribble?
I just want to make a couple quick comments. The first is exit interview has always been a problem, and it's a big problem corporately for many corporations, especially if somebody leaves that's disgruntled. They hesitate to talk to someone because they're angry. So it's a very difficult thing. I just suggest that we try to do what the other districts are doing with best practices, just continue to try to come up with something clever. To follow up on Mr. Person's comments and delay in employment, I have had a lot of feedback about fingerprinting, and I can't understand, working with a large company that does fingerprinting, why it would take so long to get fingerprints back and delay someone getting on the payroll. Because the longer we wait, there's more of a chance they're going to go and seek employment with someone else. And last but not least, I know our superintendent's been actively involved in the relationship with FGCU, and we have a dean over there, Dr. Diana Chezar, who's just outstanding. I was over there with her Friday with a bunch of students that are studying to be teachers, and hopefully we're getting those students engaged and partnering with them and giving them some opportunities to do some teaching here, maybe pro bono, or I don't know how you could reimburse them, but that's a big pot of gold there. If we can get the relationship, because Collier County and Charlotte's
We have
going to
that.
snatch them from us if we don't execute that plan. That's all I have.
Yeah, we do work with them, and we're continuing to build on that relationship as well.
All right, I just have a few things. First of all, I just want to touch on something that hasn't been brought up yet. This is why it's so important that our state legislators start working with us to, and thank you to our government relations ladies that are in the audience today. Thank you so much for working so hard in Tallahassee a couple weeks ago. I know that you're going to bounce back and forth between there, but I think it's really important that the public knows that we are trying to have these conversations with even our local and state representatives about things such as teachers who want to come back. Maybe they took a couple of years off out of the classroom. They're wanting to come back, but the links that they have to go through to get back into the system, whether it's continuing ed or what have you, or their certification has expired. So just to let the public know that we have two fine ladies that are working really hard to help execute that. I agree with you on the onboarding. That was something I heard when I went out in August to see a couple principals, that they had people eager and ready to go, but it couldn't go fast enough. And then, again, they lose interest. So I won't beat a dead horse. You already talked about that. Mr. Ribble, you bring up a good point about the exit survey. A couple of things when it comes to corporate America versus here. In corporate America, you're just a number. No offense, but it is the truth. Here, I feel like our district provides an opportunity for our staff to become family. And so when our staff is leaving, whether it's disgruntled or not, emotions are involved. And I think that especially people who deal with children have so much empathy for lots of things. So when they're doing these exit surveys, which most of the time they just don't, they wash their hands, they move along, they think it's not going to do any good. And some people just aren't honest. They're so worried that it's going to come back. And what if they wanted to come back to the district? And I think, I mean, honesty is a virtue, so continue with that. We talk about retention, we talk about exit interviews, but what about interviews about why people stay?
So the stay interviews that we're
Okay.
conducting and are in a pilot program right now is exactly what we're looking at.
Okay.
So again, as I said, it's in a pilot program. We just want to make sure that the instrument that we're using, the questions we're asking, are getting the data that we really want. So as soon as that's at a pilot, that will go out.
Because we all know that, you focus on the negative, you continue to stay negative. If we start focusing on the positive, and we have our folks out there sort of campaigning on why it's so great to work at the Lee County School District, that can't help but reach people in a different way. And I think it would change the mindset, because we keep talking about culture. I think it would start to shift the mindset. So just a suggestion, Ms. Shaviano talked about marketing earlier. Why not have these, like highlight reels or, these interviews, not just with teachers, but what about our students? Why we loved, and what about our graduates? Oh, grab them and ask them, will you do an interview why you graduated in this May or this past May? Grab them and ask them to do an interview. What was so great? What did you love about the league? I guarantee you we can find hundreds of kids that would testify that this was a great place to receive their education, and maybe start using that as our own marketing strategy, something just a little bit different. But that's just my own 2 cents. So anything else, Board Superintendent? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next is budget overview with Dr. Amy Desimore and Kelly Lecter.
Good afternoon, Dr. Carlin, members of the board. Can you all hear me okay? I'm making sure that was okay. Well, it's always budget season for us, but we are in the middle of really focusing on the FY26 or the new fiscal year's budget. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to give just an overview of the entire budget process, what that looks like, what you can expect, and then get some feedback from you as to what you would like to see or what you would like to hear throughout the process. So that being said, I will turn it over to Mrs. Kelly Letcher, who will give some overview, and then we'll go into some conversation.
Good afternoon. What I want to start with is just kind of going over the major parts of the budget or the funds so that we all have a clear understanding of what they are and what the purposes of them are for. So there are 6 parts or funds to the budget. Each one of them has their own specific use of dollars. The main one is the general fund. That is the largest. That one is the primary funding source for our classrooms, the education of our students, and the operating expenses of the district. We have our debt service, which is the payment of our debt. This fund is made up mainly, or 100%, from a transfer from capital. So when you're looking at the budget and you have that total amount in debt service funds, that is actually money that is already being accounted for in capital funds in the revenue and then being transferred over. So it's kind of like a double count, but we have to show it separately. These are the funds that we use to pay off our certificates of participation or our mortgage payments, both principal and interest. Then we have our capital funds. These are the funds, of course, as you know, used to build our schools, secure our buildings, buy equipment, and maintain our buildings as well. These funds, the main funding source is the capital outlay millage piece of it. We also have sales tax, which is the second highest part of it. And then we have things like impact fees and just some other small things that come in. In the building of the budget for this, we have a capital committee that meets regularly, that goes over all of the needs of the districts and then prioritizes them based on what needs to be done and the funding that we have available for these things. The next fund is our food service fund. The food service fund, as you know, supports the breakfast and lunch program for all of our students. The food service team, while building the budget, will estimate the revenues they think they'll be bringing in and the expenditures needed in order to have the staff to feed the students and stuff. And then this is a reimbursement from the federal government for the meals that we serve. Then we have our special revenue, which is our federal funds or our grants. These are used for specific purposes, and there's actually 2 types that we get. We have the entitlement grants, which are like your IDEA, your Title I, your Title II. They're given to us specifically for use for certain students or programs and things that have to be done. And then we have the discretionary grants, which are the grants that people go out and apply for, that they may have a need or want to do something and they go get a discretionary grant in order to, fill that gap. The next and the last part is the internal service funds. These are funds that cover all of our insurances, our health insurance and our property casualty insurance. This is another fund that is a direct transfer from mainly the general fund, but for our health insurance, if we have someone who's paid from a grant, the grant actually pays for the health insurance for the employees that are paid from those grants. So this though is a complete transfer from one funding source to another. So it's kind of like a repeat in the budget as well. So I kind of wanted to go over the timeline in building the budget so you have some idea of what when we start, what we do and everything. So the budget actually starts building in November. So September is the final approval. We have a couple of months to kind of get things settled up, and then we start right up into the next year's budget in November. We start planning for both the budget, or both the department and the school processes at those times. In January, we open, as you know, the school choice applications. We normally do our FTE, our student projections with the state. However, this year, I will tell you that they just informed us that they will not be
ready to open that system until mid-February, so we'll be a little bit behind on when our projections to the state will be. In January, we normally receive the governor's recommended budget. We actually just received that information yesterday, so we'll be digging in onto what the governor has recommended. And we also start our department process. As you know, the superintendent has made it her priority to look at every piece of the budget. And so that process was started before January. It was started before we left for the holiday break. So, and that is an ongoing process. In February, the school choice open enrollment ends. We start working more in depth on school allocations with the projections of the school by schools and really looking at where we think the students are going to show up and what type of students at what schools. In March, the legislative session will convene. The school choice batch will run in mid-March, and then we'll release the school allocations to the schools at the end of March. We do that right after the school batch to make sure that the projections that we thought the schools were going to get align with where the parents have enrolled the students at, so that there's no disconnect, that they have more kids that show up than what we had thought they would. In April, after we release those, we work with schools in case there's any concerns that they have. They may think they may get more kids than, what we have. They may think the student population is a little bit different than what we have, and we work with them to address those. We're also going to work with them beforehand to kind of give them an idea of what we're looking at so that they can provide feedback prior to as well. And then we'll be reviewing legislative items as they're coming in and as we're seeing them to see what the budget impact on us may be. And then in May, the legislative session will end and we will receive our first FEFP calculation, or Florida Finance Education calculation. In June, we will be presenting a preliminary budget to you. We will continue over the summer, both June and July, to reviewing school allocations just to make sure as kids are coming and going that our schools have the right resources to be ready when they start school. In July, we will receive our second calculation. That comes in right after the final millage rates are determined by the state. And basically that most of the time is just a switch in funding from state to local or local to state funding. We have had some minor changes in the past, but we really don't expect much change in that overall revenue at that point. We will be advertising the tentative budget and following all of the trim requirements or the truth and millage requirements. We will be presenting the tentative budget to you all at a public hearing, and we will again be reviewing school enrollments. And then in August, our students are back in school. After they come back, about the 10th day of school, we actually do another count just to make sure that the schools have the resources they need for the kids that have shown up at the school. And then we really start finalizing the budget at that point to bring you the final budget in September. And then we're getting all of our documents to the Department of Revenue and the Department of Education, property appraiser and tax collector, all of those things that are due after the final budget's approved.
So that was an overview of all year long, really, the types of things that we look for in the budget process, the types of information we need to incorporate into the budget process, and when we do that. So when we are thinking about building the budget, or when you're thinking about building the budget, really think of it as in three kind of distinct processes that we work on. The school process, the department process, and then there's the district-wide or the overall district process for types of expenditures and planning for that really we do at the district level. We're going to talk specifically about two of those today, the school and the department process. So with the school process, the schools receive what you'll hear called a DRA, or a district resource allocation, and that's the school's budget for the year for personnel and all things school. in order to generate those, we do work with our principals, with the regional superintendents, the different program areas such as ESE, ESOL, technical education, and the planning department. And the things that you see listed here are some very important details that we need to know and plan for to appropriately resource a school. So what types of programs will be placed at the school, how large is the school, and how many students or FTE can it hold versus how many we think will actually show up, right? Are those things that we think about. And also, of course, what are the projected overall revenues we're going to get through the FEFP, because those things, that revenue has to balance out between what we are giving our schools, what we have at the department level, and what we have to support everything else district-wide. So those are the types of information that we analyze and goes into creating their DRA, or their district resource allocation, that will be provided to each school, as Kelly just said, around the March or end of March timeframe. And then the schools make their resource and their staffing decisions based on that budget and their needs and the established requirements that come with that district resource allocation. So with the DRA, the schools do receive information about requirements, what it is that they're required to do with those dollars, what it is that they're recommended to do based on the types of population, types of programs that they have. Within those parameters, they have the ability or the flexibility then to use their resource to staff as they believe is appropriate for their individual location. So that's an overview of the school process. And then after that, after each school is allocated their DRA, then we do meet weekly with regional representatives or the regional associate superintendents to review those school budgets and any requests that any individual school has made after they have received their budget. So if there's something that they believe that they need that they cannot resource with their resources, something that they believe that maybe we didn't think about or see, they have additional information, they certainly are free to go through and provide that information to us, put it in request, and then those requests are reviewed, and then schools are communicated with as to the decisions of those requests based on all the information that we have. In the department process, which works just a little bit differently, in the department process, as Mrs. Letcher alluded to earlier, through this year, Dr. Carlin has made it clear that we need to examine everything inside of the budget and take a critical look at everything that is there and kind of take a new look at it based on the priorities that we know that we have or that we've outlined for the upcoming year. So in the process, every division is in the process of doing that now, meeting with the chief strategy officer, the deputy superintendent for a detailed budget review. And within that, then every department is tasked with reviewing possible areas of fund realignment based on the district priorities. So how would funds be realigned in order to better meet those priorities? And then the division chiefs, together with the deputy superintendent, will prioritize those requests, and then based on that review of those prioritized requests, then the superintendent will give a final approval on any recommendation for department budgets. So the school process and the department process are very different and very distinct in the building of a budget in each individual year.
So we are going to be providing information to you every month on budget overview as we're in the process of building the budget. Some of the things that we'll make sure that you have information on are the estimated FTE projections once they're done, the governor's recommended budget, what that makes, looks like for us, the school allocations, what are those required things, what is the recommendations, kind of giving you that full picture so you understand what the schools are looking at and what they need to build their budgets on. The revenue outlook, as the legislative session is going on, we'll be providing some revenue outlooks based on some estimates that are coming in and the information that we're hearing. And then, of course, the recommended 5-year capital plan is another big piece of it that we'll be sharing with you as we're moving forward. These are just some of the things that we'll be bringing back to you as the months go on. And definitely, if there's anything that you want to have more information
information on, or you want some in-depth information on, please share that with us, and we would be more than happy to add that to our presentations to make sure you have the information you need to make the decisions that you need to make. I just want to remind you that the public hearing on the tentative budget is scheduled for July 29th, and then our final public hearing is scheduled on September 9th. And from there, we'll just turn it over to Dr. Carlin and you for discussions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Desamores and Mrs. Letcher. I really appreciate the overview. And one of my goals coming in as superintendent is to make sure that our budget is readily available to you all, but the public as well, and to make sure that our budget and processes are as transparent as possible. You know, one of your most important responsibilities related to statute is to provide oversight for a budget. And so it's very important to me that you are provided on an ongoing basis, not just waiting till July or September when you are provided with preliminary or final budgets, but all along, each month of the year, where we sit down at a workshop. I've actually asked the team to make this a standing item so that we bring portions of the budget forward, our thinking about the budget, and our processes related to the budget, so that you have a chance to look closely at it, to ask all the questions you want to ask, because this is such an important role that you play as a board. So just thank you to our team and to all of our team members in support of these presentations, and we look forward to your questions and your comments.
Board members, I'm going to open this up for comments or questions. Mr. Persons?
Oh, I love this discussion. Having had my own business, the one thing that helped me the most would be to compare the previous year to current year, especially on expenses. You know, where are we at? I mean, has insurance, I mean, I'd like to be able to compare the two. Salaries, and it could be broken up into TAL, SPAL, administration, all those different major areas that we actually have some control over. There's some that we don't, so it's not much we can do. Unlike my business, revenue was very important. Our revenue is sort of set, so we don't really have a lot of things we can do there. So I'm not as concerned about that, other than we don't go over budget, obviously. But I would love to see those figures where we're actually at on expenses and different things compared to previous year to this year.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. I'd like to add on to that, if we could get perhaps next time kind of an update where we're at with our HB1 school choice dollars and how that's kind of been impacted throughout this year.
Did you say school choice dollars?
Yeah, HB1.
Oh, HB1.
Yeah,
Got
sorry.
it. Okay.
So, and one last question, just generally, going back to the school process, has there been any major changes to how the budgets are handled with schools this year? Any anticipation? I know last year was kind of a big change and there was a little bit of feedback on that. So I just wanted to see if there's any. I know we now have the regional superintendents that we didn't at that point last year. So, but I was just curious.
Yeah. Last year, was last year coming, so the budget for this fiscal year for schools was there was a completely different setup and process for what we use. We have been communicating with principals throughout the way. We've been taking their feedback and we're making some tweaks to the process. We don't envision that there'll be another major change like what you saw last year going into, next year. But there will be some tweaks to the process based on the feedback that we were getting from our regionals and from the principals as well.
Thank you, Dr. Desamores.
And we will, I can't really detail those right now because we're still working on them, but there will be a presentation to you sometime coming up very soon, where once we nail them down, we'll be able to say specifically what those are.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for this presentation and your hard work. It sounds like June and July are not the months you two take off. Yeah, just putting that out there. If you don't mind, I'm going to pause briefly. We have a board member, we have a public comment, and I just wanted to ask the board, we have a very lengthy item following up with this item, and we only have one public comment listed right now. Would you all mind if we allowed public comment at this point, because the topic is for an item that's already passed? Is everyone okay? Is that a thumbs up? Okay. So, Attorney Dodig, will you please proceed with public comment?
Sure.
Sorry to throw that at you.
No, it's all good.
Okay.
School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on the meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please provide it to staff. Public comment is held at the podium in the front. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. However, at the conclusion of public comment, the chair, superintendent, or board attorney may respond if deemed necessary. Abusive language is prohibited. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per School Board Policy 0169.1 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. Board Policy 0169.1, the time per speaker is 3 minutes. You will find a countdown on the big screen in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. Please state your name when you approach the microphone. There is one speaker, and that is Nanette Bird Smith.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Carlin and the board. I'd like to, after a lengthy period of retirement and involvement in public schools, I had a personal incident that reignited my passion. And when I looked at the agenda for your meeting today, part of it is our student code of conduct, which includes our dress code. I'd like for the opportunity, I would like to see you look to see at the disproportionate targeting between male and female when our dress code descriptions are there. They're very heavily weighted towards female, that most of the infractions are female-induced, and the consequences are often inappropriate, and they definitely are not consistent from school to school based on my information where I went and researched. There is also, when I looked for information and research situation, there really is not any data-driven suggestion that strict dress codes really influence student achievement. There's a lot of opinionated data. There's a lot of classroom or teacher, but they're basically a lot of opinionated things. But the biggest one is that in enacting a dress code and deciding on an infraction or whatever, the biggest thing that really got me in the particular incident was the removal of a student from instructional time, and being the second thing on the list for the superintendent. When we want to be punitive, which there's no other way to look at it other than that, and we're removing a student, and it's too inconsistent from school to school, because one school would look at a minor infraction, probably go on about the day, maybe relook at the situation, and the kid is not removed. When we have classroom time that's only 47 minutes, and you're pulling a kid out, you've just lost a whole class period. And I'd like to see that we look at it in that basis and look to see that those infractions are really female-based. And they put the onus on a female student who's going to be responsible for someone else's behavior. Because oftentimes we cite this violation as a distraction to someone else. And I think we need to look at that in the situation that everyone's responsible for their own behavior. And to hold a female child in middle school is the big emphasis because we have so many changes in a middle school child. And to tell a female that what they look like or what they happen to accidentally done, raise their arm.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. And just so the public is aware, I don't think we have anyone else, but should someone come before the meeting's over, I'm welcome to open this back up.
Sure.
All right. Thank you. We're going to go ahead to, and sorry to throw this team off a little bit, proposed school start times for 25-26. Dave Newland, Dr. Nathan Shaker, and Jared McKinney will be presenting this afternoon.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Dr. Denise Carlin and Board Attorney Robert Dodig. We are back in front of you today for, again, this is a follow-up to the proposed Safety Start initiative for transportation, the three-tier bus route system that we bring in front of you today. Again, this proposal is for the beginning of the 2025-2026 school year. And as we get started, one of the things I want to start with is why are we here again today? Again, as a reminder, we want to stay focused on the issue while we're bringing this forward. The idea is we want to resolve the busing issue, which is very important. We're responding to, again, as a safety concern, to improve student achievement. We're responding back to community about the concerns for busing, to be more efficient and be fiscally responsible. Again, we want to make sure that we are responding to the families. We don't want students any later or delayed at bus stops unattended. And we are committed to improve the bus routing system to respond, again, to community concerns for the safety of our children. I bring this in front of you again from last time, just a reminder to talk about our AM arrival and PM arrival, which again, this goes back to arrival at school. Students arriving at school on time are at 83%, and then picked up is at 60%. When we look at that, again, how many bus riders do we actually have? So back in October, we did a survey. We have approximately 47,000 students that ride the bus to schools. So you look at the arrival time, we mentioned the AM, you're looking at, based on those numbers, that means that 7,990 students arrive late in the morning. If you look at the PM arrival time, based on the percentage, what that means is 18,800 students are picked up late in the PM time. So when we look at these, I really show you the numbers based beyond percentages of what students are actually arriving late in the morning and are picked up late in the afternoon.
My apologies, can you hear me? There we go. With that, on the updated proposal, we have Tier 1, which is in a range. So you have all your high schools, and we want to make sure you keep in mind that the numbers that are next to the high schools in the middle and the elementary are the number of routes for those tiers. So in the high schools, we have the 7 to 2 p.m. We always have the buses drop off 20 minutes earlier for the breakfast, so that means buses will be dropping off at 6:40 in the morning for that 7 o'clock start. For the elementary, your K to 8s, it will be 7:10. Along with your middle schools, that'll be 9:25.
Since our last presentation, we've gone through a pretty extensive feedback cycle, and we anticipate going through another one after this presentation. We have spoken with principals, we've spoken with principal leads, transportation staff, communications has been heavily involved, labor relations, TALC was provided an opportunity to provide input, student enrollment, APCs, food service had a lot of positive input to put in and considerations as we look at these times. There was cabinet discussion, operations has been involved, just making sure that IT knows about changing the door locks or changing the times for alarms. There's been a whole system kind of involvement in what are the implications of these changes. We know that it was a topic at Town Hall. And we anticipate it continuing to be a topic at the town halls. So I'll say of that feedback, the top concerns that were shared were really about AM, PM care at elementary schools, teacher-supported entry and dismissal. What does it look like for buses and parent pickup? Will 2 minutes per period really make a difference? High school contract time, contract start times and end times as they relate to the bell times was brought up. Elementary schools currently with an additional 30 minutes. We have 9 elementary schools that currently have an additional 30 minutes, as well as concerns with SB 733, the legislation mandating later start times for high schools. I want to address each of these with you. I'll start at the top and kind of go from there. When it comes to AM and PM care at elementary schools, all elementary schools will have a program, either internal or from a partnership, and many middle schools already have them. Teacher-supported entry and dismissal. At all 3 levels, but especially with high school, there will be a reduced time between the start of a teacher's contract and the time that students arrive to class. At the high school level, this could be 15 or 20 minutes. In situations where entry or dismissal requires classroom teachers beyond contract hours, school administrators can address the situation with supplements, with staggered schedules, or with leveraging support staff or non-instructional staff. We are hearing that the concern is not universal, so our principals will do what they do. They're going to get creative, they're going to take care of their staffs, and they're going to help shore up time for our teachers to do what they do best, which is to teach. The question of will 2 minutes really make a difference? The answer is yes, in big and small ways. In small ways, 2 minutes per period is time for an exit ticket. It's a little extra time for students to complete their homework, and it's enough time to make up for a bathroom visit. In a big way, an extra 2 minutes per period is 14 minutes per day, over 180 school days. It equals almost 42 hours of instruction. High school contract times start and end as they relate to bell times. Regional superintendents are committed to working with our principals to build systems that maximize the time our teachers have to plan and teach. Common planning is an example of an effective way to help teachers collaborate during the school day. For IEP meetings, MTSS meetings, etc., I think we can take advantage of the success we've had with the Kelly Services System to provide coverage during the day for these types of meetings. Elementary schools currently with the additional 30 minutes. The 30 additional minutes came from a funded state directive more than 5 years ago that mandated the extra minutes, but it ended after the first year. We have continued this practice by funding the extra time through our general funds. We offboarded 3 of our middle schools last year, and this year it will take effect with our elementary schools. As far as its tie to compensation, the moment is right as we build compensation systems through phase 2 of the Evergreen Study compensation revision. Instead of receiving salary for the extra 30 minutes, the study seeks to compensate staff who are working at hard-to-staff locations or with at-need students. And lastly, SB 733, the legislation. We're diligently watching the path of SB 733. The change is the natural next step after the improvements in efficiency that came about from our proximity shifts. A 3-tier transportation system is safer and more efficient and will result in more achievable daily expectations for our drivers. So those are some of the most common concerns that we're hearing. They were also included in an FAQ that's available to the board. Where are we going? After initial feedback was provided, high schools did move forward by 5 minutes. They went from a 7:05 to a 7 o'clock start time. This is to help build in that hour, and I think we're given transportation, I think is getting an hour and 10 minutes between tiers now, just to provide a little bit of buffer. Middle schools did express concern with going to the 49-minute period, and that was a strong voice from the middle school principals. So middle school is going to stay at 47 minutes for another year, and we'll reassess next year, ending at 4:15 instead of at 4:20. This accommodates added lunchtime, so the move from 4 o'clock to 4:15 at the middle schools is really part of the process of adding 5 minutes to each of their lunch shifts, which was something we worked pretty closely with TALC on. Special centers moved to Tier 3. There's a particularly complicated nature of special centers transportation. These schools transport students from around the district, not just within a proximity zone. Schools like Royal Palm, schools like Buckingham. So we have committed that after the first batch runs in early March, we'll get a better perspective on where all of our bus routes are going to run, and we can kind of give it a second look. But really, in order to make sure we can hit that 3-tier system and be there on time, our special centers did move to Tier 3. And one of the biggest changes that is going to add time into that day is a 30-minute lunch across all levels. Very early on, this was a conversation with TALC, and it was something they were interested in. And as we talked with them about adding some instructional time throughout the day, the 30-minute lunch was a partnership that we wanted to commit to. So that 30-minute lunch will account for an extra 15 minutes in the day, because there's 3 lunch shifts, an extra 5 minutes at each. We'll build out some of that time. Really, the final feedback period follows this presentation. Next month, we will bring the board a final recommendation for start times at each school.
So our timelines pending board approval will be, as of February 1st, we have assigned every single eligible student this school year into our maps to be routed. so that we can have the tangible routes in hand when they finish to see what everything's going to look like. So on the 28th, every route sheet will be printed, and we will begin our tie-up process, have the test staff work together so that we can have the accurate data for the final phase of the process. And by March 8th, we will have everything done, tied together, all the zones will be working together, and we will have the tangible data of what everything will look like and what's needed for this initiative to work.
I'm sorry, for school administration. In February, really, they're going to continue to build mock bell schedules, scenarios, considering transition times. Our high schools currently have a 5-minute transition time, which is going to bring a lot of non-instructional time into the middle of the day, but they are big places as well. Meeting schedules, how can we make sure that we can have teachers at meetings, but also not require them to be there after contract times? And how do we make sure we're protecting planning time? In March, when the first batch is assigned based on final student enrollment, due diligence will be given in considering minor adjustments to the special center tiers. And really in April, master scheduling workshops will be there to support common planning, and flexible scheduling with our special education students will be an absolute top priority in supporting our schools. Food service. They've reviewed the bell schedules to manage the impact on staffing and food service at breakfast and lunchtime. I think they're going to have a strong ability to respond once we have final numbers or final times shored up. They're going to need to communicate staffing or material needs to budget, creating a cost analysis. If we decide to have more opportunities for grab-and-go breakfast, how can we make sure that we still have those high-protein breakfast items in a grab-and-go scenario was a big conversation that we had. And in April, can we train kitchen managers and staff as needed, would be the plan.
And for communications, again, pending board approval, you'll see any updates to this will be obviously affect our website, any existing documents would be changed. And then, of course, we will continue communicating with our families via messenger, social media, and media outlets to let them know that any new changes, that this was to be approved. And we'll stand by for any questions, the board or superintendent. Thank you. Thank you very much to our team, and Jan, just thank you for continuing to
Sorry about that. Thank you very much to our team for stepping up and taking on this major challenge. And as we've talked about at prior workshops to my colleagues on the board, we've talked about two major priorities in the school district. One is to improve student safety. This accomplishes that. It does not allow students to be left alone at a bus stop, only for a bus not to come, or maybe a bus to be an hour or two late. That may be okay if you're a high school student, you're 17 or 18 years old, you can turn around and go home. If I am an 8-year-old, I shudder to think what that looks like. I'm a parent myself, and I would not want that to occur, and I'm sure you would not either. I heard some statistics today, things like 8,000 students late to school every day. I just want you to think about that number for a moment. 8,000. So if there is a compelling why for us to make this change, 8,000 speaks very loudly to me, and I know it speaks loudly to you. We are number 9 out of the 10 largest school districts in the state of Florida when it comes to student achievement. It is not a mystery to me any longer when I hear those types of statistics why we are in the place we are. And then I hear really good news. I hear things like 2 minutes of instructional time we gain per period, 14 minutes a day, 42 hours of instruction at the high school level. That's 6 more days of instruction. What could that do for our students, especially our students that struggle? So we're excited about this proposal. We see it fixing a real problem in our district. Again, you know I'm about solving problems, not living in problems. And we're here to hear your conversation today, and we look forward to your discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Carlin. Mr. Persons?
For the public, if you would just give a definition of the 2 minutes gives you time for an exit ticket, what that is, because I think the public may not be aware.
I apologize for the jargon, absolutely. Exit ticket is a great way to do a check for understanding at the end of a day. So if I teach a lesson, say on main idea, just asking the kids on the way out the door, write down one word on a piece of paper about what you think the main character did that influenced the main idea of the story. They write one word and they collect it at the end of the day, and the teacher can really get a good sense of what they captured that day. That really regular formative assessment is what we call it, or check for understanding, is very powerful.
Thank you for that.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Thank you. I know this has been a conversation, it's been a hot topic even for the community, actually. So my real concern is, or I understand that student achievement, that's important, so that is a concern. However, I am concerned over how this will impact the teacher's planning time. I know that they, in the morning and the afternoons, they would take advantage of that additional time, and now I think that time is shortened, if I'm understanding that correctly. And then I know another concern that a teacher shared with me was that they lost the teacher duty days due to hurricane, and they lost that this year, and those teacher duty days are vital for teachers, and so for their own success. And I know that they're looking at changing their curriculum or how many tests they give and how much work they give them based on what they are able to, do themselves as far as, checking and their own, it's the work. There's not enough time in the day to get the work done. So how are we going to help the teachers be successful and to allow success in the classroom? Thank you.
I can give a partial answer, Ms. Giovanelli, at this point. I would say anything we can do to have our teachers, when they are on our campuses teaching our students, is going to be the most effective piece that we can do. I know a lot of their time can be taken up with meetings. As I mentioned, Kelly Services having a strong fill rate really provides us an opportunity to call in subs, temporary duty subs, to help cover classrooms so that teachers can attend IEP meetings, MTSS meetings during the day. It's a practice we've done in the past. And veered a little bit from during the sub-crisis. Contractually, teachers get 300 minutes of planning a week. And so we average that out. There's an additional 30 minutes that's built into the contract that happens one day a week. So we're committed to that 49 minutes during the planning period, and then really making sure we protect, I would say, ideally 10 minutes at the start of the day. To just kind of get in and get ready for the day. Our high school principals are telling us that when it comes to monitoring the students outside of the instructional time, they do have systems and resources that can help take that burden off of the teachers.
Dr. Shaker, if I can add to that as well, one of the pieces of advice that I've given to our associate regional superintendents is to make sure that they're sitting with school principals as we are planning through this. So here we are in early February. This isn't in place until August potentially. So to sit with their principals and go through, check for before school programs at the elementary, check for after school. How's that going to work at dismissal? What's planning time going to look like? How can we share best practices around our lunch times? And, we have some more senior principals that, like us, have been around for a while. You mentioned substitute teachers, our guest teachers being available. Those are some practices we used for many, many years at schools. So it's kind of going back to the future, right? Going back to benefiting from some of those great practices we had in place that freed up time for teachers so that they could be engaged in that planning. They didn't necessarily have to worry about, those other duties because we had substitute teachers that were available to step in for a period of time. So we'll be asking our associate regional superintendents to sit with each school and make sure that those processes are tight and that we're adhering to the contract.
Thank you. I know that leadership is different at every school, so I appreciate you giving that guidance to the principals for those that may not be, quite there yet in those decisions. So I just know I am concerned, and the teachers, sometimes they feel forgotten. Yes. And so we just want to make sure that we're bringing them along. But I know that, cheeks in the seats is very important. And that was a conversation that we had when this came out 5 years ago. They need more time, seat time and instructional time. And we weren't able to do it then. But I commend you for taking this bull by the horns and doing it now. And it's a baby step, because I think, with the time with the time changing to possibly again in '26, if our girls are not successful in getting that changed, which they're working on it, everyone's working on it, but I mean, then this is a step towards that as well, and I know that, and that's something a conversation that people need to be aware of. We may not have a choice, so this is a small step towards a bigger step that could happen, that, we don't really have a choice. So thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. I have a couple questions, please. One is, I'm trying to understand the common planning and then Kelly Services, because you just mentioned that. So, and I'm not a teacher, never been a teacher. So you have the common planning time. Do we just call these the Kelly Services and they're going to pop in and take over so the teacher can leave the classroom to go do their planning? I mean, what does that look like?
No, I apologize. They're two separate avenues. And so common planning really gives our teachers an opportunity to meet with their PLCs, to meet with their grade levels. If we build into the schedule, if we build into the master schedule that teachers who teach like subjects or like courses or like grade levels can meet at the same time, can have their students away at the same time. So when we refer to common planning, it's really just increasing the efficiency of when they would have team planning time, PLC time. When we talk about using Kelly Services, that's really in service to not having meetings before school, not having meetings during planning times, but really having a substitute come in and kind of they juggle between classrooms all day long. They go to this classroom, the teacher's able to leave and come in and be part of an IEP meeting or an MTSS meeting, and then the sub moves to another room and that teacher's able to come out for that period and be part of an MTSS meeting or an IEP meeting. It is an effective practice when we use it.
That makes more sense to me, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then my other one was the AM, PM care. We know that our schools, a lot of the schools already have that. However, we also know that there is not adequate space for this. So every child is not able to even get into these because there's just not enough space. So what do we do? How do we take care of those kids? Because I know that for a fact that there's many of my schools that the parents at the day one, they're full. So these kids are going home. They're, the latchkey kids are back again. And they're, some of them are going home, some of them get home. Because if you look at your number, it was 19,000 are home late versus the almost 8,000 that are late in the morning. So that's a lot of children that are just somewhere. So that's really concerning to me. It's like what, and I know that people say that, once they're finished school, they're not our problem, but they are to me. So I just want to make sure that we do look at that. And then the other one was the high school, the schools with the 30 extra minutes. So those schools that have the 30 extra minutes already, they will continue to have those 30 minutes. They will lose that 30 minutes. So in essence, they lose that 30 minutes and then they lose the money that they have been receiving. So we are now taking the money from the teachers who have been receiving this. So now they're going to be decreasing their wage. And I'm hearing that because they're very concerned about the loss of that revenue.
And as I mentioned, it was a system that was put in place years ago. We've kind of maintained it. We've kept it afloat. We did off-ramp our middle schools last year, I think with the expectation of off-ramping elementaries this year. And my hope is being in a shift right now with our compensation study, that those schools typically having the additional 30 minutes had represented an instructional need, had represented a need to provide the students, because they're at-risk students or they're in schools that need additional support. I believe in this next round of compensation, the next round of negotiations, which comes up. I think addressing compensation as it relates to the schools that you serve or the schools that you work in, instead of relying upon that extra half an hour for the additional compensation, is going to be key to that study, to negotiations. Don't-
Right, well, because it's very hard to tell, the teachers that have been receiving, now you're gonna lose, I don't know, what, $4,000, I believe it's somewhere around there. And so if they're counting and they're used to that, and I understand it was a pilot, we've only been doing it X amount of years, but now I've been accustomed to, that's part of my budget for my home and my family, and now you're gonna take that from me. So I just,
So if I could just caution the conversation crossing into bargaining?
oh, okay, that's not bargaining,
And,
okay.
well,
I
You're
understand.
talking about compensation, so
Okay.
I just
Sorry.
wanted to caution you all.
I just wanted to share that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dodick.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. First off, kudos to Superintendent Carlin and her team. She officially started talking about this in November, and it's the beginning of February, and look at how far we've come. So I want to give, as I said, kudos to you and your team. This is amazing. This has been a needed step, and I know we have some consternation from some of my fellow elementary school parents, but we need to do this. We all, especially of us been here for a while, have seen, the calls, the emails, the things about having those kids not showing up on time and the impact it has. I mean, I know we've gone out to schools and they'll point out, this bus isn't here, this bus isn't here. Now this holds back for, our ELA and for math. So kudos to that. So I just wanted to request two things. I just want to make sure, and I know the superintendent is always on top of this, making sure communication to our families and staff is very clear on this and very precise. I know that's a standard you hold, so. And the second thing, I know it's been out there in the community a little bit, and I can always have Mr. Dodick follow up on this, but there's been some talk about compliance with the law, and for next year, for 25, 26, this does comply with the law, so as it currently stands.
That's correct. The statute that was impacted by HB 733 doesn't go into effect till the following year.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, I have a couple of comments. Thank you for all three being here. I hesitate to even have this conversation because we, like Ms. Giovanelli pointed out before, it may not even be a conversation we needed to have. But nonetheless, we're gonna fight it all the way. But so I'm gonna ask Ms. Jordan. You bring up a good point, and I appreciate you asking on behalf of this part of our staff. How does this affect? We're adding the 30 minutes. How does this affect our Title I schools that already have additional time? Does it affect them at all, Dr. Shaker? That are required additional time to be there? They're a little bit longer, or they come early in the summer. Can you talk about that?
So our Title I schools, having Title I status doesn't attach to having an additional 30 minutes. The additional 30-minute piece was a different piece of legislation that dealt with the bottom 300 schools in the state. So Title I we have Title I schools that don't have an additional 30 minutes.
Okay, I just want to reassure our teachers that are at those schools, because we'll get an email about that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to, Mr. McKinney. How is your staff? Like, have you gotten feedback from your staff about our bus drivers and our transportation is so important? Have you can you talk about that for a minute?
Yes, so we had meetings in every transportation site. It was voluntary. All the drivers and attendants came, and we explained to them the why, to know the what. They were very receptive. A lot of them didn't understand at first, but we did break it down to bring the comprehension, and they were very excited. I think they are happy to see the change come.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We're in sync. I wrote down, what's the why behind the what?
Look at that.
It's amazing. But it wasn't about transportation, but that's to the same point. I have gotten a lot of emails and a lot of conversations and sidebar conversations about teachers with their own children in daycare. And they are just very concerned. So I spoke with I sat down with one elementary school principal who graciously gave me their 30 minutes and one middle school principal who graciously gave me their 30 minutes just to get an idea about the impact that it would make on their students, or excuse me, their staff with children or, even whether they're students that go there or young babies, like at preschool, daycare, before care, after care. I'm a huge believer in communication is key. And whether you like what you hear or don't like what you hear is one thing, but if we can at least tell them the why behind the what, they're more apt to understand why we are doing what we're doing. And when you have numbers like 8,000 students are showing up to school late, and what did you say, 13 or
Almost 19.
are in the evenings unsupervised, who knows? I think if we can just, in the future, should this be put into play, if we can just be very transparent about why we are doing what we're doing, I think you're going to get a lot of people that hop on the train. Change is hard. And teachers like living in a planning period, 7 to 3 and all day long. So I completely appreciate that, and change is hard, but I think if we are transparent about why we're doing this, I think it will be accepted. So that's just my recommendation, that we make sure we're real clear.
And I completely agree. One of the things we continue to talk about as we walk down this path is making sure that we are being clear in our communications, but also attaching faces to the situation. That's why when we were talking the other day, perhaps in I believe it was in cabinet, a percentage is one number. When you start to put it in terms of numbers, 8,000, 18,000, 13,000, that starts to resonate with people. So that feedback is excellent, and thank you. And we will be communicating very clearly. We've really wanted to have the conversation with you first, like really making this going along, certainly checking in with TALC, checking in with principals, checking in with others. As we now start to ratchet up and move forward and start to think about how are we going to bring a final product forward to you, we will blast it in all media outlets. So everybody's going to be hearing about it. We just wanted to make sure we took the training wheels off and just were able to dissect what some of the issues were, working on an FAQ, going back and getting some additional feedback, surveys, things like that, so that we can really understand what people's perspectives are. So we think we're getting even clearer on what those concerns are and making sure that we're addressing those, not just giving lip service to it, but actually having real solutions to the issues. So we thank you for your conversation last month and this month. It's really helping us to refine this plan. Thank you.
And to your point earlier about the fact that we are elected officials and we have the opportunity to engage our own communities and neighborhoods, I would charge this board with getting out there and making sure we're communicating with our YMCAs and our Boys and Girls Club and our STARS and all of the wonderful organizations that partner with the before care and after care, and have some true empathy of, while we have to adjust, maybe they will adjust as well their times to help accommodate our amazing educators. Any other comments? Mr.
I just
Ripple?
want to add one more W to your what and why, and that's when. And I think it's important that we communicate the targeted date over and over and over again, even if we do a countdown. The nice thing was I visited yesterday with a high school principal. I really wanted to talk about code of conduct. We wound up, and she brought up the changes in the bus schedules and how they'd be effective. And they're already talking about it in this school with the teachers, and they're very positive about it. So I think we're getting the message out there. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. We're going to go ahead and move on to job descriptions, and we're going to welcome back Ms. Montemurano back to the podium. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. Today, presented to you, we do have one job description that you were given previously to review. That is a coordinator of community support and volunteer programs. And at this time, I will open it up for any superintendent's comments or board questions.
Comments, just look forward to your conversation.
Any board member comments? I have one.
Okay.
So when I was reading the major function, and then I knew that we were before this, we were going to have this conversation about, then the conversations I had with the principal and then other teachers, would this particular person be that branch between the district, and those organizations I just named, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, helping with teachers that need assistance with daycare, where, if those time changes go in effect, we're really going to need to start to have these conversations with our fellow philanthropists and our awesome charity organizations. So would this particular person help be a vessel between the district and those foundations?
So I think it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to be part of that. We certainly can engage this person. They'll be working closely with constituents. The primary role of this person is to address constituent services, constituent concerns as they come forward, and to be able to route those and also work with our schools on coordinating volunteer programs. So yes, tangentially, this position could be perhaps. I have a few other ideas on who might be a better point person for that work.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is policy review. Kathy Dupay Bruno will be presenting this afternoon on policy review.
Afternoon, board members. We have 4 policies that are before you. Are there any questions or concerns about the policies?
Board members, do you have any questions or comments for Ms. Dupay Bruno? Mr. Persons?
Are these taken from Neola?
Yes.
Okay, that's what it looked like, and I thought so. That was all. I just want to make sure it was conforming to everything else.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. May
Seeing
we
none.
move this forward to public hearing, second reading? Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chair.
Mr. Dodig, I just want to make sure no one has shown up for public comment additionally.
I have no information that there's anybody else.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So then we're going to go ahead and move on to good of the order and other business. Board members, do you have any comments? I will start with Mr. Fisher.
Okay. Most of mine I'm going to reserve for tonight. The only thing I want to give you an update is on the board auditor. The job has remained open. I'm going to be sending out memos shortly. I just need to get one more piece of feedback from administration, but that'll outline kind of the process and where we're going to go with that. So, and if you have any questions, I encourage you to follow up with staff and legal on it. They've been very helpful, so I appreciate HR and legal especially for all their help on this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Okay, I'll be brief. I do have a little bit of a list of things I've attended, but just a reminder that this Saturday is STEMtastics, and everyone here is invited, including anyone out there. It's a wonderful event. It's Saturday downtown at the Harborside from 10 to 2, and then Sunday is the Junior Parade for the Edison Festival of Light, and I encourage everybody, and the Junior Fun Run, and I encourage everyone to participate or attend. It would be awesome. And I know it's Super Bowl Sunday, so that's a conflict, but just depends on what your favorite thing is to do. But I mean, this past weekend, I judged the Science and Inventors Fair Saturday at FGCU, and that was awesome. I would encourage y'all to attend that if you can next year, because it's really, these kids are like very intelligent, just saying. So, and then Debbie and I attended Pippin. I don't know if anybody else did on Sunday. It was Sunday, yes. And that was awesome at Norfolk Myers High School. And then on Friday night was Aladdin and at Edison Park. That was great. And then I did get down. Debbie reminded me that they had, was it the Art Fest with the chalk walk? Yes. But I was down there for the parade stuff, and I got to walk around and take some pictures and see some of it, because it'll be there all week. It'll be there on Sunday, actually, if anybody's down there. That art is amazing, that they do. I don't know when they start drawing, and when they finish, because I can only imagine it takes some time. But that is all I have, so thank you.
Mr. Ribble.
I'm going to defer till tonight.
Okay, Ms. Jordan.
I'm going to do most of mine this evening, but I just wanted to say I attended my first DAC meeting. There was 88 in attendance. Mr. Bree Bruno had come in and spoke with everyone, of course on Zoom, came in on Zoom, and spoke about the new structure and Dr. Amy was there. Who was there with us? I forget who was there with us. I'm sorry. Cuba McCoy, thank you. I was like, Cuba McCoy, she was the other person that was there with us. But they spoke to everybody regarding the structure and the breakout rooms. There really wasn't any comments about that. Everybody understood it. And then, of course, they did a presentation on the code of conduct. There was a lot of good conversation that took place, and a lot of it was about cell phones and the consistency we heard over and over again. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then, of course, they broke down what will happen if we have other needs for them. If you have to do breakouts, then that would be done at a different time, never at the same time, so other people will be able to participate. And that is it for now. Thank you.
I will defer until tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm probably not going to be very popular at the dinner. Oh, I got to have Miss Shaviano. I'm so sorry. Go ahead. You're next.
Oh,
I'm reading off my script.
I'm deferring till tonight, so you're good. Thank you.
I'm probably not going to be very popular at dinner table tonight because I said cell phone bell to bell. And I also want to thank Ms. Smith for coming and speaking this afternoon, and thank you for indulging getting out of the order. But I do think we need to address code of conduct across the board, especially K through middle. It is a constant. I feel like I hear about this all the time, just little spurts here and there. And, you know, while it's important that we let children express ourselves is one thing, but I do think uniformity somewhat does help, whether it's distractionless or not distractionless. I am a firm believer in dressing for success makes one feel successful. And that's even when you leave high school and go get your first job, or even in high school when you go to get your job, you know, and we teach our children to, you know, look their best, they feel their best. And, but I think that's something maybe we should have some discussions about is, you were right about inconsistency from school to school. And maybe those are some chats we have offline, for sure. So I'll be in trouble tonight because I talk about cell phone and uniforms. So, but anyway, I did get to walk the DARE, Mr. Fisher, help me. Thank you. I took fifth graders to that, and when I was a teacher, and it's very realistic at times, especially when you're a 10-year-old watching what could happen because of a bad choice. So as I was walking through that, we have just talked about this afternoon about open gate and the just this vaping epidemic. And I don't know, maybe that's something that it's not necessarily falling on our shoulders, because I know a different organization puts the Drug House Odyssey on, but perhaps it is something that they talk about with high schoolers about the consequences of vaping, you know, because most of our students probably went through the Drug House Odyssey, whatever elementary school. But it's just something that triggered while I was walking around there. And then I'll save, again, my apologies, Ms. Shaviano, I didn't turn to you. Sometimes I need to go to my left first. But I will save all of your athletic updates for this evening. So, Mr. Dodick, do you have anything?
Just great joining you today. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
And Dr. Carlin?
And I will be very, very brief. I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Ribble. He threw out a name of a book at our last workshop called The Anxious Generation. And I will tell you, you have inspired our student services team to kick off a book study, and they even brought me a book. So we will absolutely share if the board would like to read that book. It's very interesting about mental health and the impact of cell phones and other things that are happening with this generation of students. So if you're interested, please let me know. We'll make sure we get you a copy. I have finished chapter 1, and as I just received the book, and I'm looking forward to reading it thoroughly, just to get a little better handle on that. And I'll reserve the rest of my comments for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight, we will have a student performance at 5:45, followed by our action meeting at 6 p.m. At this point, having no other business to come before this body and seeing no objection, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 3:35 p.m.